Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Drew Reeser, and I will be doing this presentation here on buying versus leasing. So we begin our story with this beautiful couple that you see before you. Aw, don't they look happy? So the people you see before you are my grandparents, Gary and Edna. Now, for the sake of things, we will go ahead and refer to them as the Frasers on occasion throughout this presentation, so bear that in mind. Now, my grandparents and I are quite close, and so on occasion they'll call me up whenever they need help with things, and oftentimes this will involve technology, and so they'll give me a ring and they'll ask for help. Now, on one occasion, they called me up and they said, "You know what, Drew, we could really use some help picking out a new car." And I said, "All right, you know what, I'm sure I can help with that. How about this weekend?" "Great, I will see you then." Well, that whole week, I spent a little bit of time searching the computer. I figured they might not be able to do that, so I decided to do that myself. And searching online, I wanted to try and find them the most, reasonable and economical and hopefully fuel efficient with a nice bit of styling. So naturally I went with a Ferrari because, come on, fuel efficient. And well, Sunday came around. I figured it'd be a good idea to give them a call and check in on things, so I did. Lo and behold, though, it turns out that they didn't really need my help after all, because not only had they found a vehicle, but they had already purchased it, and it was sitting in their garage. So scratch my ideas. And as I said, they did purchase a vehicle, and they found themselves a beautiful 2013 Acura TL. It's a mid-size luxury sedan, right up their alley. Now, being the college student that I am, I asked them, how were you all able to afford, such a nice vehicle? And they replied to me that retirement tends to mean that you have a fair amount of money to your name. And so when you acquire enough of that money, you can actually go out and spend it on nice things that you would like to have. And so they decided, why not spend some cash on a new vehicle? And as we branch off here, we'll go ahead and take a look, and we see that in CEE 300, Dr. Seager, he figured it would be a great idea for us to take part in a second tech report. And as we're well aware, that second tech report was a buying versus leasing comparison for a vehicle. And drawing on this past experience, I figured, what would make a great tech report, one that is actually actionable, is a comparison between buying and leasing of my grandparents' purchased. And figuring, this is a pretty stellar idea, and my group agreed, and so we went forward with this for our tech report. Now, in this analysis, we first wanted to define, obviously, the question that we're attempting to answer. And so overall, pretty straightforward. We figured we would want to see if the purchase made by the Frasers, their option to choose, which was just to purchase outright with cash, did they make the right decision? And so, as we're well aware, there are various options, and we wanted to try and simplify the scenarios in order to make all things equal possible. And so we introduced some basic assumptions. Now, the tax rate that applied to their purchases was at 9.1%, which is for Peoria. Now, their loan interest rate, since they have great credit scores, was very low at just 2.65%. And if they would have taken that, the length of payment would be 36 months. And overall, we decided for them to keep the vehicle. Based on past history for the Frasers, my grandparents have tended to own their vehicles for 8 to 10 years on average. So we'll take a look at the different options here. And we can see that the first option, which they chose, was to purchase with cash up front. The second one, they could have financed it, Instead of paying all at once, they could have taken out a loan. Lease option 1, which was nationally advertised, required initial payment. Nationally advertised lease option 2 did not require an initial payment. So we'll go ahead and break down some of the initial facts for each of these options. Now obviously, if you purchase with cash up front, it requires that you pay the full purchase price as well as taxes and applicable fees. Now the finance via loan did not require a down payment, but it did require you to still pay some basic fees and taxes for registration and such. Now lease option 1 did require an initial payment, as we mentioned, while lease option 2 did not require such an initial payment. Now we'll venture off here and we're going to look at the monthly expenditures. Well, obviously, for the first, if you pay cash outright, you now own the vehicle. And so monthly, obviously, you don't require anything in terms of paying on the vehicle itself. The loan option was a 36-month loan. Break it down monthly to 0.221%. Now lease option 1 was 36 months and it had a relatively lower monthly payment, while lease option 2 waived the first month's payment, but it required that you pay about $40 more per month than lease option 1. Now as for the future details, what does it mean at the end of the 36 month? Well, since we agreed that the Frasers would be keeping their vehicle under all options, they wouldn't have to pay anything for the cash option or the loan option, but when it comes to the lease options, they will have to pay the residual value as well as applicable taxes and fees, since they are choosing to purchase the vehicle from the loan office. Now, all of this information is fairly complex when it's just written out in form, so an easy way to simplify it, as we're all aware, is through a cash flow diagram. Now this cash flow diagram is very useful in that it provides a visual representation of otherwise clustered data. Now the best thing that we know that we can apply for a cash flow diagram is to find the net present value. Well, in this case it's not really value so much as cost, since the Frasers had to make expenditures and they never chose to sell their vehicle at the end of the 36 months. So the applicable equations you can see here on the left hand side, it's for a series of monthly payments, and on the right hand side it's for that one-time single payment. We're going to use those to find the net present cost. Now overall, the first and the third, we have information for both of those, but as for the discount rate, that's a little less certain. So we figured that we would make a sensitivity analysis over a given range of discount rates. And you can see here it spans from -1% out to 3.5%. Now those lines, as you can note, are fairly close together, so it's hard to make an outright judgment now. So I approached Dr. Seager with a couple questions, and I wanted to ask, can we have a little bit of clarity in regards to what an appropriate discount rate is? And he said, why don't you go ahead and characterize your grandparents for me? All right, my grandpa, he's a funny guy, and my grandpa, she's kind of a control freak, but and he said, no, that's not what I want. I said, oh, I'm sorry, okay, they're debt free. They earn a lot of their money currently off of their investments, and they like to save for the future, for the security of their remaining family members. And overall, he replied that, that sounds like a pretty low discount rate to me. So we took that and we said, they probably do. They have a very low discount rate since they like to plan for the future so strongly. And that corresponded to 0 or perhaps even slightly negative. And as you can see from the present value prediction, a very low or perhaps even negative discount rate corresponded to the lowest net present cost for the cash purchase option. Now overall, the basic conclusion is that given a low enough discount rate, in fact my grandparents, the Frasers, did make the right decision to purchase their Acura TL outright with cash.